Mr. Grancy.
Good afternoon, Chair Podolsky and Commissioners. I'd like to just take a quick moment here to introduce Nikki Niles. I know that many of you have been briefed in regards to Ms. Niles, but Nikki Niles is the new DFO Community Corrections Director. And I just want to take a moment to introduce her in this public setting here today. So, with no further ado,
About a 15-minute speech, right?
Yes, I'm absolutely prepared for that. Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm just happy to be here and happy to continue to serve in this capacity. Thank you very much.
Very happy to have you.
Thank you.
Welcome. About a 15-minute speech.
Yes, I'm absolutely prepared for that. Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm just happy to be here and happy to continue to serve in this capacity. Thank you very
Madam
much.
Chair, very happy. Kind of like old times. Look at
Welcome.
this people.
Twice.
15 minutes.
Yes, I'm absolutely. We know how to behave. Good afternoon,
No.
Commissioners. Okay.
They see you have a loop going on there. Okay. That was interesting.
We'll get this figured out eventually.
And Commissioner Tyne is back with us.
Commissioner Tyne.
Keep dreaming.
Is there anyone else who'd like to use the public comment period? No? All right, we will call the meeting to order for Tuesday, June 15th, and start the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We sure saw a lot of flags out yesterday.
Yep.
Flag Day, it was amazing. All right, I can tell you that I've had over many years a lot of exchange students over time, and they were always amazed at how much the flag meant to us, and they hadn't experienced that in their country. Okay, we now will have a public hearing. Have a motion to open a public hearing for the Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System, MS4, Stormwater Program.
I bet Skip's got that one.
I'll make a motion.
You make a motion? Second. All those in favor of holding a public hearing for the Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System, wow, that's a mouthful, Stormwater Program. I'll say vote in favor.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Skip, are you here? There he is.
Of course.
Tell us everything we need to know about the separate storm sewer system, stormwater program.
That's right. So we like to call it the MS4.
That's easier.
It's a little easier, that's right. My name is Skip Langer. I'm the Soil Conservation Manager with the Olmsted Soil and Water Conservation District. And this is Aaron Gam. He's a Soil Conservation Technician with the district as well. So we're going to give you a little overview about our MS4 activities here in Olmsted County. And we'll start off with, as you said, Municipal Separate Storm Sewer Systems, quite a mouthful. We call it the MS4. And really its primary purpose is to treat stormwater runoff within our urbanized area of Rochester, on our roads, our ditches, all the pipes that Olmsted County operates, to ensure that the stormwater that falls from the sky, so precipitation, gets treated before it hits our receiving waters. And so the primary goal is to reduce pollutant loading from hitting our state waters. So the primary pollutant that we see in our areas is we have issues with sediment, so that's soil leaving the landscape and running into the local streams and rivers. And so many of our local streams are impaired, and so we're working through the Soil and Water District and with others like Commissioner Tynes on our Zumbro One Water One Plan policy committee to develop plans that address those types of erosion.
Done? Okay.
So the state entity that's responsible for the MS4 program is the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. They've developed a language that addresses stormwater, how we need to react to the treatment required for the stormwater runoff, and so those kind of come down originally from the EPA. They're the federal entity, the Environmental Protection Agency that requires treatment before stormwater reaches lakes, streams, rivers, things like that. So, because we're in an urbanized area with a population over 10,000, we've become a municipal separate storm sewer entity. And what happens is that we develop a stormwater pollution prevention plan that creates a set of activities that the county will undertake to ensure that we are providing adequate treatment of that stormwater. So, what it really does for us is, as a permittee, you can see that we must provide treatment of our stormwater. Along with that, we also perform inspections, maintenance to upkeep that system, make sure that we're maintaining capacity of the system. We do involve the public, and we'll address that a little bit later, but programs like Adopt a Highway. And then we also provide training and education not only to the public, but also to our staff so that they're aware of activities that we need to undertake in order to meet the requirements of the permit. I think Aaron's.
Yeah, so what you see here is a kind of a overview of what is in our MS4 system. So as you can see as the map there, it's kind of restricted to the urbanized area of Rochester. And there's kind of three components to our infrastructure. One being outfalls, which is where water leaves our jurisdiction either into another jurisdiction or into waters of the state. We have to control any erosion or any nutrients or pollutants going into those waters of the state. Stormwater ponds, we have 14 of those. Those are along our county roads that control runoff from our infrastructure there. And then also BMPs, which primarily are on our county grounds and around our buildings where we are controlling runoff before it reaches surface water.
So BMP's best management practice.
Yeah.
We're kind of a acronym heavy group, so it's hard when you start speaking the lingo. Sometimes you forget other folks might not speak the same language. So the stormwater treatment that we do is indeed to protect our resources, and so the MPCA tasks us with, kind of in the order that you see there, to create opportunities for resource protection. And so when we have runoff that we're dealing with around, whether it's around our buildings, whether it's along our roads, we first have to try to infiltrate the water. And so there's, by infiltration, we mean that we create basins where we store, and then the water is allowed to seep away into the soil profile. That's the treatment that you see. If if infiltration can happen due to soils or other site characteristics, then we go to biofiltration. Biofiltration would be a system where we use vegetation, and as the water runs through this vegetative swale or our local system of ditches, it traps sediment, uptakes nutrients, slows down the flow, things like that. If we can't do biofiltration, then we look at retention. So that's kind of that typical, that upper corner picture of everybody's seen those wet ponds, stormwater ponds around. You know, Aaron said we have 14 in our jurisdiction. The city has over 300 that they take care of within the city of Rochester. So those are kind of the three ways that we're treating stormwater. You can also see in the lower left-hand corner with our sand and salt facility. It's a covered facility, protects it from the elements, keeps the expensive resources that we use to do our snow and ice removal and treatment protected so that it's not washing away.
So part of the requirements of the MS4 is continued inspection and maintenance of our infrastructure, and that's the outfalls, the ponds, and the BMPs there. So as required by the permit, we have to inspect 20% of our outfalls per year. We have 116 outfalls in our jurisdiction, and as you can see in the pictures, the outfall is you can see a couple there. They're typically culverts that lead from our stormwater system into a surface water or into a different jurisdiction or private property. And we inspect those yearly or 20% a year just to look at needs assessment. As you can see, a culvert is sedimented in, and we look for that because once it's sedimented in or it's not functioning properly, we have a water backup or a pollutant loading issue into a surface water. So we inspect BMPs annually and 20% of ponds and outfalls every year to assess needs, and as we assess them, we replace them or fix them. And we continually map and update our inventory. As you know, roads switch ownership quite a bit, and so we're continually keeping track of our culvert system, our pipe system, and our BMPs to keep on top of it.
Yeah, we've got our public works crews are always out, mowing our ditches and maintaining those. As Aaron said, the sediment clean out from the ditches to maintain capacity. Those are engineered designs, and so we want to make sure that the capacity that we had intended still is working long term. Yeah, and then of course our mapping and inventory, it's always changing. Um, so we're keeping that up to date. Street sweeping's another big part of our program each spring, especially after winter's ice and snow removal. We're out we have a couple street sweepers that we take care of our Homestead County properties and and roads. And so this year last year I should say, we removed 192 cubic yards, nearly 20 tandem truckloads. So that's a significant amount of material that gets removed, and then we haul it. It goes out to Public Works facility where they can screen it, and then we reclaim it and use it in as fill and things like that in other projects. So there's some savings there. It gets blended with other fill.
It's 192 yards. Is that a lot or more, or kind of average?
It's probably a small amount compared to what the city pulls off of their jurisdiction, but I mean, 20 truckloads of material is pretty significant when you figure that that's accumulated over time.
Yep.
With sanding and salting, during a winter season.
Okay.
So part of the permit requirements is education for the public and training and education to staff. And as you guys are all aware, 2020 was a little weird for education. Typically we have events like Earth Day, Expo, County Fair, a little bit better, and individual workshops and demonstrations, usually in person. So 2020 kind of posed some challenges to the outreach components. We did our best with Facebook outreach events and kind of online events, teaming up with the City of Rochester Stormwater Department to host some resilient yards workshop and some best management practices for urbanized area. But we have a website that gets, we had 1,591 hits on our stormwater website, and that kind of goes through the permit and some educational stuff. And we also co-op with the City of Rochester to create new brochures to hand out to the public for several stormwater issues, whether it be smart salting or resilient yards or reduced mowing, stuff like that. So 2020 was a little weird. 2021 kind of started off with good outreach with Earth Fest was virtual this year, so we're getting back rolling again with some of our outreach efforts. And another thing we have is the RUA meetings, which are the Rochester Urbanized Area meetings, where we meet with all the MS4s in the area, that'd be City of Rochester, the 4 urbanized townships, the Federal Medical Center, and RCTC, as well as us. We try to meet quarterly and discuss our different plans and our different outreach and kind of stuff going on. And then also we have continued collaboration with the City of Rochester Stormwater Department. We work very closely with them and outreach for education to staff as well as the public. So
What about the smaller cities?
smaller cities, they are not required under the MS4 because the threshold is a 10,000 population limit, and if they're discharging to an impaired or a endangered stretch of water, like a trout stream or something like that, then it's 5,000 threshold. So the only MS4 city in Homestead County is Rochester.
So MnDOT doesn't have any responsibility on those highways?
They do.
MnDOT, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, I think one other important item is that our Adopt a Highway program that the county runs is really valuable from an MS4 standpoint because we get all this volunteer effort from our public to clean our system of road ditches. And so, the amount of labor that it would take for staff to be able to go out and do something like that would be immense, and we don't have enough people to do something like they take care of. So Lori Collins sent me the numbers on that, and we have in the county, we have 349 miles covered by volunteers picking up garbage. So that's pretty tremendous. And then of course, we benefit along our roads through the Litter Bit Better program, which picks up thousands of pounds of garbage during their event as well each year. So that's what we have for you. Any questions today? Thank you.
Mark?
All right, so I see these stormwater ponds that when we're seeing the county has them, the city has them and all this stuff, but also private businesses and developments have them too.
Right.
So what control is there on those that are owned in the private sector to make sure that they are maintained so that 20 years down the road, if they're filled up, that they're cleaned out?
Yeah.
And is there any process by which if a pond goes in, a stormwater collection pond goes in, that can be added to the wetlands bank that the county has to maintain a inventory of?
Yeah. So the city within the city, they would have jurisdiction over all of the stormwater ponds. I think by and large, most of those, some of them may be held by homeowners associations with their responsibility to get those cleaned out and ensure that they're functioning properly. And I think in order to do that, they've got to have them assessed and pay for that privately. But I think all of the city's got staff that they hire through their stormwater fees that they charge, and they go around and do assessments just like we are of our stormwater features to ensure that if they're filling to capacity with sediment and things like that, that they get cleaned out. That material has to be tested by a certified lab, and then that material, when it's pulled out, I think they take it down by the airport and it gets land spread in order to work the contaminants out of it. So in Olmsted, we also need to monitor ours. To date, we haven't had any cleanouts that we've been required to do yet. But I think at some point as a county, we will probably be undertaking some of that work to get those done. And then as far as them becoming wetland banks, a stormwater pond doesn't meet the same criteria as what a wetland would. They have different functions. Generally in a stormwater pond, there's a lot of bounce because you have these direct piping inflows. And so because of that, it's more of a, they're designed as stormwater ponds to detain stormwater, whereas wetlands are natural features and basins that allow water to, even though they do have some bounce, they don't bounce feet like you would see in a typical stormwater pond. So there's just no opportunity. They don't meet the requirements that you would see for a wetland bank.
Right.
Great.
But, I hear that, and I understand this on the wetlands issue, but if it's a private pond that's required in the townships, not in the cities, there's no control over it. Then
I don't know that there's anybody else ensuring that those ponds are necessarily functioning to the capacity, that they were intended.
Well, maybe You know, it hasn't been that long that we've required them, but we may want to look at that long term because otherwise they don't serve a purpose if they're filled in.
Definitely, yep, I agree.
Any other questions of Skip? Are there,
Yep. Thank you.
are there any questions from the public for this public hearing? Anyone online, Lisa? No? Anyone from the public wishes to ask a question or participate? Anyone from the public?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Moved and seconded to close this public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nays?
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Thank you, Skip.
Thank you, appreciate your time.
We will now move on to the consent agenda.
Madam Chair,
Was there something out of, okay, yes?
I'd like to remove item F from the consent agenda and talk about it afterwards and vote on it separately, please.
That's fine. We also, on that particular item, had a change in numbers as well. So we will vote. I will read the consent agenda and then do I need to have the county board vote on
No.
removing that?
No, just-
just remove it. Okay. I'll get this by December. All right. I will now read the consent agenda. Approve the minutes from the county board meeting on June 1st, 2021. Approve final payment for SAP 055-605-016. Award the contract for SAP 055-604-019. Approve whatever it takes grant. Accept the Community Living Infrastructure Grant Award. Going to say an F, that's been removed. G, approve and sign the Southeast Regional Crisis Center lease agreement, purchase of service agreement. Adopt a resolution to participate in the annual Council on Local Results and Innovation Local Performance Reporting Program and approve the 2021 report.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor of the consent agenda with item F removed, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? So it has, that motion is passed. So let's go back then to F, and that was called approve the resolution in support of Olmsted County 2022 bonding requests.
I'd like to basically make a motion to approve the verbiage as it's been presented. Just rearrange the order, like the order to be number 1, the MRF. Number 2, the interchange at 104 at County Road 44 and Highway 14. Number 3, the fairgrounds.
All right, and does your Grant Park, right?
Grand Park. Fairgrounds.
And you also included the 12,500,000 state bonding dollars to be matched with 12,500,000 county funds for the project.
Murph,
Yeah, for the MRF.
Okay, includes that as well. Any,
Gotta have a second.
can a second it? Fine. Is there any discussion or?
Gotta have it. We need a
Sure,
second. I made the
What?
motion.
I'm
I made
sorry,
the
I
motion.
thought Ken seconded it.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Oh,
Not yet?
Oh, I
Oh,
didn't
I'm
hear it.
sorry. Do I hear a
Pardon me.
second?
Second.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Brown. All right, it's been moved and seconded.
Hard.
Do we have, do we? Oh, gosh, I hope he's not filming this. Are there any questions or discussions on this?
I'd like to
Yeah,
I explain my rationale for swapping number 2 and 3. You know, number 2, I think everybody knows that's been one of my projects, 44 and Highway 14. But more than that, it's about public safety, and you know, we've had people killed there, and more importantly, this is a state responsibility. We've got our money, we're ready to go. This is something that the state, it's part of their responsibility to fund these interchanges. So it's quite important. Also with DMC, I mean, I could go on and on for 45 minutes, but I don't think you're interested in that. Whereas the Graham Park, you know, that's more of a want. That the state, you know, if we can get that at some point, that's good. But these are priorities, and to me, public safety and transportation, getting people home and to work and to their jobs, and having materials go up and down the highway in a safe manner is much more important than the fair or the Graham Arena. So that's my rationale.
Any discussion or questions?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Cascade.
I agree that public safety is more important. I also think that we can kind of count on the legislature to see it that way as well. And the legislature has specific funding around transportation, whereas they do not necessarily fund community development projects like Graham Park. And so calling that out as a higher priority, I think, would help us with the ranking that will come from the Walz administration and the ranking from the Walz administration to the legislature. That's what we're really working on here, is persuading the governor's office that this is a high priority, the materials recovery and Graham Park, that's something our community would like to see happen. I think we can pretty much count on the legislature making transportation a high priority within bonding. We can't count on the legislature making the MRF facility nor the Graham Park improvement a higher priority than public safety. So this is really about getting the Olmsted County trying to persuade the Walz administration to rank it, and then also as the Senate and House capital investment committees come out, to be able to communicate to them why we think this is worthy of their consideration. We've had it on our list, like I think 3 years now. I think we are at the point that I think the last time that the House committee was here, the chair then said, well, I think you need to do one more time. So we knew we weren't going to probably get bonding that last time. But I think this may be the last time we try. And I think having it be higher on our list of priorities communicates that we really would like to see this happen. So I don't disagree that public safety is a higher priority, but I think that what we're trying to do is persuade other elected officials that this is worthy of their consideration. We already know that they will make public safety a high priority.
May I respond?
It was also the recommendation coming out of the legislative committee, so.
Commissioner Buer?
Well, when I had my small group discussion with your last statement that it was the priority, I was led to believe it. Maybe I was wrong, that the priority was 104 was before the Graham Park, that it was MRF 104 or County Road 44 and Graham Park. That's what I was led to believe in my small group discussion, and so maybe I was wrong. But be that as it may, again, you know, I don't have anything against fairgrounds.
It's great.
In fact, I was, but I'm not sure people in Bemidji or International Falls want to be putting more money into Rochester. We built the hockey arenas with no state money. We built that with private money and local money. And so, you know, number one, we can talk all we want to about it. But again, it's the state's responsibility. We've been talking about County Road 44 and 14 for quite a number of years. Maybe not since I've been on the board, but almost as long as I've been on the board. And we haven't got the money. So having a priority, it's got to be moved up. It's got to happen. We've had people killed there. And to say that, well, they have a separate bucket for transportation that's going to get funded, it hasn't in 15 years. So I'm close to putting it number one, but I can see the MRF being number one. But I'm not going to budge off of it being number two. It's got to get done.
I agree, it needs to be done.
I have a question.
Commissioner Wright?
Is there a priority, those who are more familiar with the legislature than I am, in that we have planning money for the intersection right now. And is that process has to be completed or done before we go back and then ask for bonding for the rest of the interchange to be done?
No,
Or do you get the bonding ahead of time? That's my question.
Talked to Senjum. I think Ken has too. We've talked to many people at the state. Senjum, Carla, some of our representatives. No, it's concurrent. You got to keep at the thing. The understanding is, I mean, they're driving to try and get this bonding money right now. We've been in private discussions, but you can't try and do one step and then stop and not it's a continuum. You got to be after that whole pot of money. And we've seen that, Kay, with Highway 52. I mean, you got to be there all the time, and you got to have a plan, and you cannot stop. And it's like the little Dutch boy with his finger in the dike. You got to keep pushing against that baby. Otherwise, if you stop, that's easy.
Did you get your question answered?
Yeah, but I'd like to ask our engineer that has been familiar with this. Is that the way that you see that this is done?
Yep.
Okay, appreciate that, thank you.
Any other questions or discussions? So the motion is to reorganize the order of the three bonding requests. Number one being the materials recovery facility. Number two being the intersection at CASA 44 and Truck Highway 14. And third being the Expo Center at Graham Park. That's what we're voting on. So all those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed?
Nay, or aye, whichever. I'm opposed.
Okay, so that was...
Maybe we need a roll call vote.
Yeah. All right. Commissioner Flynn?
Aye.
Commissioner Cascaden?
Nay.
Commissioner Wright?
Nay.
Commissioner Tyne?
Aye.
Commissioner Brown?
Aye.
Commissioner Breer?
Aye.
Stephanie, Commissioner Podolsky also votes aye. So the motion carries. We will change the order. Though I believe all three are very important for us.
So I'll move the consent agenda item. As amended. I'll move the consent agenda item as amended. I believe that we still have to do that.
Oh, we still have to do that part?
Second.
All right. So, okay. So now we are approving that it be on the consent agenda as we have amended it.
Correct.
Any discussion or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries. Thank you. All right. And we can move on now to our regular agenda, discussion and decision items. First one is to accept the 2020 Olmsted County Comprehensive Annual Financial Report.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Madam Chair. My name is Wilfredo Roman Catala, Olmsted County Chief Financial Officer. Let's see what happens here. I'm playing with the gadgets, so I haven't been here for a year, so I need to get used to it again. And wonderful to be back. This afternoon we're here to just give you some highlights about the audited financial results. I'm teaming up with Kim Schultz and Sheehan Hediger from the Baker Tilly CPA firm, our external auditors. One of the things that we want to show to you briefly this afternoon is how well, not only how well the financial results are, and how strong of a financial position we're in, even after such a devastating pandemic. So I just want to highlight that to you. But before I begin, I would like to share some gratitude to a number of individuals who deserve it. First, to my finance staff who helped prepare the report. They have done a fine job getting the financial statements ready, as well as being all the supporting documentation required to have a successful audit. To our partners in other departments such as HR, IT, Public Works, and Human Services, just to name a few, who devoted time and a lot of energy preparing information needed for a successful audit as well. A special thank you to Nancy Thomas, our assistant controller, who, with her great coordination and work and dedication, set up to success as a team, and also helping teaming up with the auditor so we can have a successful audit. And finally, I would like to thank our CPA firm, Baker Tilly, and their staff for their professionalism, knowledge, great attitude, efficient, and painless audit process. So quickly here for the agenda, I'm going to go over some key drivers related to our solid financial performance. I'll briefly review government funds related fund balance. Then I will turn it over to our partners in Baker Tilly so they can present the audit summary and results. And finally, we'll ask you for your acceptance of the comprehensive annual financial report. Just a quick reminder, I know that most of you, just like me, used to use an acronym related to the financial report. And just a reminder that we no longer refer to the comprehensive annual financial report through that acronym. So we're just kind of trying to delete that from our memories. Key drivers for solid financial performance. Let's start with good leadership, clear leadership in direction from the board and the county administrator. Okay, here we go. County management, forward-looking and innovative perspective. Staff who understand their purpose and who are committed to working as a unified team. And to me, that's probably the single most important driver. Here we go. A responsible annual budget development along with the CIP, Capital Improvement Plan. And from a finance perspective, a systematic monitoring of financial and programmatic performance. On an annual basis, at least twice a year, we review our budget, we review where we are during the year, our projections, are we meeting the expectation of the budget, yes or no, are there any adjustments that need to take place, is the revenue coming in as expected, or are there any expenses that need to be delayed for whatever reason. So I think that's also really important. And finally here we have very strong reserve and liquidity that provides the county kind of stability and flexibility during uncertain times, just like we did with the pandemic. One of the things that we did, obviously, even though we have very flexible and strong financial position, we, as a AAA rated agency, a local government, we decided to monitor our revenues, understand what was coming in, the reasons, obviously, the revenue was not coming in, but also understanding what expenses can we delay so we can maintain that strong financial position. So it's kind of a balance that we need to go through to better understand and manage. So focusing on the governmental funds, the 2020 fund balance, as you can see here, we have our governmental fund balance at the end of 2020 was about $120 million. Those categories are included here, highlighted in order. The assigned fund balance, about close to 42%. Unassigned fund balance, close to 40%. Restricted fund balance, 16%, and non-spendable, 2.83%. So as you can see, the assigned and unassigned, what we refer to as available, it is about $97.7 million, or about 81% of the fund balance. And then we have about $22.8 million, or about 19% of unavailable. And these percentages are fairly similar to last year, which were about 80-20. And when we compare our fund balance to 2019, we can see that it decreased about $5 million, with over $3.2 million of that in the available category. So why does the fund balance decrease? So most of the decrease in the governmental fund available fund balance can be attributed to transfer that we made to the internal service funds. And I'm just going to name a few things here. For example, we transfer funds to the Administrative Services Fund to cover the cost of the finance and HR human resources system upgrade. As you recall, we have it labeled as the hub. and it is our ERP system, and also to maintain a positive net position. We also have an administrative human services fund who needed to have an infusion of funding, and we transfer some of those funds as well. And then here finally we have the transfer of funds to the self-insurance internal services fund to maintain a position that is between a financial position, net position that is between 40 and 50% of expenses per county policy. So as in prior years, I believe it's important for the board to understand what is happening with the available fund balance, because it gives the perspective from an external standpoint, what is happening with the funds that we can use, but also gives us the liquidity and the power to move a strategy forward and priorities forward. So we have used this graph for a while, and I think it's a good measurement of how we're doing as it pertains to available fund balance as a percent of annual revenue. So I know it's our accounting practice to have a fund balance that is equate to about 42.5%, or the midpoint that is recommended by the Office of the State Auditor. That is the dotted blue line here. That is at 42.5%. And then the between the 35 and 50 are the kind of the safeguards, if you will. The two dotted black lines, that's the corridor that we want it to be in. We don't want to be too high, we don't want to be too low, we want to be within that corridor. And as you can see over the most recent years, we've been trying to maintain closer to that midpoint. Obviously, in 2019, we have a very good financial year where we have an extra $10 million added to the available fund balance. And then in 2020, we stayed within that margin of 42.5, about 42.2. And as you recall, it was mentioned before Administrative Committee, we transferred early on this year a significant number of dollars, and I mentioned that in previous slide, to the internal service funds, close to another $10 million. So when you consider that, you know, we just came from a pandemic situation, a very challenging time. We still managed to manage our resources effectively and efficiently, and then put money aside so we can satisfy other needs within the internal service funds. So kudos to us as an organization to be able to do those things within the challenging presented in front of us. Okay, so I'm going to stop here for a second, see if you have any questions before we jump into get a helping hand from Sheehan Hediger or Kim Schultz from the CPA firm Baker Tilly. Any questions you have for me before I let either one of them start it? Okay.
Another banner year from our finance department. Thank you, Wes.
Absolutely, my pleasure. So Kim or Sheehan, either one of you would like to get us going? I had in front of you, I don't know if you can see it, the first slide says 2020 Audit Summary.
Okay, great. This is Kim Schultz. I can get us started today with some general information about the audit results, and then I'll have Sheehan Hediger help walk through some financial information. So on the next slide, you'll see just a brief agenda of what we're going to cover today. The financial reports are pretty extensive, so I think Wilfredo did a nice job of picking out the most important financial metrics. So hopefully the slide deck we have kind of complements what he's covered already. So looking at slide 3, this is just an overview of our audit process in general. And this is pretty standard to what you may have seen in the past. So we start our audit process generally in December with some preliminary work and some planning procedures. This year, all audit procedures were done remotely. And then we did the final field work where we are finishing our compliance testing and verifying balances and doing all of the substantive procedures over your financial information. We did that the last half of April. And the county staff, as usual, we've commented, we've had similar comments in the past, but the county staff just is extremely well prepared for each kind of step of our audit process. So I really do echo the comments made earlier about the finance team. They've been just really great to work with. The 2 audits that we've done so far with working remotely have gone just extremely well. So I also want to thank everyone involved in that process. So we have issued 3 reports, an independent auditor's report, a report on federal awards, and then our reporting and insights letter, which I'll go over each of those items just very briefly on the upcoming slides. And then in our reporting and insights letter, that would be where we would disclose any difficulties we had working with management, any disagreements that we had about treatment of financial transactions or any accounting and reporting, or any transactions that just really seemed very, very unusual or lacked, any kind of authoritative guidance. So I'm happy to report we have nothing like that to disclose to this group. I think in general, things went very well, and certainly nothing, unusual to the extent that required any sort of additional disclosure. Also, no material audit entries. So I would say that is requires a big congratulations to the finance team. I think that's a significant accomplishment. Okay. So the summary of auditors' results related to the financial statements. We did issue an unmodified opinion on the financial statements that says that the financial statements fairly present in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. We also call that a clean opinion. And also, we issue a letter on internal controls over the financial reporting process, and we disclose no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in your internal control processes. Also, we do a number of procedures that are required around compliance with Minnesota state statutes, and we found no instances of non-compliance for that either. So extremely just completely clean audit result. The summary of auditors' results for the for the federal awards. We tested 3 programs this year for compliance. We tested the Highway Planning and Construction Grant, the Coronavirus Relief Fund, which was a new grant this year, and then the TANF program. So with those 3 programs, not only did we not find any compliance issues or any findings, we also had no reportable control deficiencies either. So completely clean opinion on those federal award programs as well. Okay, so now I will pass it off to Shan to go through some financial highlights.
All right, thank you, Kim. So if you can see the slide with of the pie graphs, this is starting out with the governmental activities of the government-wide financial statements. So Wilfredo gave a high level of the fund balance and the fund statements, which is really your basis that you use when budgeting. These government-wide financials are the full accrual statements, so they're really presented like you would see a business financial position. They include the long-term assets and liabilities, so your capital assets, your long-term debt, pension liabilities, and such. So the governmental activities includes your governmental funds, so the general fund, infrastructure, health and human services, and then also the internal service funds get rolled up into this. Just looking at kind of a year-over-year comparison of the net position, the percentage makeup between the 2 years is very comparable. The net position did increase by 32.2 million from 2019 to 2020. Revenues increased about 27 million. This is largely due to the coronavirus relief funds and the various CARES Act money that came down. Olmsted County received a little over 20 million in 2020 for that, and all of that money was, required to be spent in a very short time frame. And then expenses, on the other flip side, only increased about 7.4 million. A lot of this is just a being more conservative with spending, as Wilfredo mentioned, delaying projects and such. So just being very, very careful with spending in such an uncertain year. I would recommend at the front of the comprehensive annual financial report is an management's discussion and analysis, which gives more detail into year over year changes, and also looking ahead at what's to come. So check out there for more details, and then you can also see at the bottom here that there are details of the activity that goes into the net position increase on page 3 of those financial statements. The next slide then is the business type activities within those government-wide financial statements. This largely consists of the Waste Management Fund and the Olmsted County HRA. Again, the makeup of the net position percentage-wise, very consistent year over year, which is expected to see. The net position there did increase by 5.9 million. Revenues saw an increase of about 4.2 million from 2019 to 2020, with expenses only increasing about 697,000. Again, you can see more details of that within the statement of activities in the financial statements. And then we just put in here a few metrics, just overall to see how the county is doing. One thing to look at would be the debt margins. The county is at about 16% of its debt limit, which is fantastic, and right in line with the trend over the last 5 years. This really shows that there's plenty of debt capacity if more debt was needed to be taken on, but also shows that you're not needing to borrow for operations just to get through an average year. So the debt issuance is carefully planned out and only taken when needed. Another debt measurement here on the next slide is the debt per capita. So for 2020, your debt per capita was about $977. And with a growing population that and a fairly stable debt activity, there was some increase in debt this past year with borrowing additional money, but that trend is also quite level and will continue that way if you continue on the same path. So then I think I will pass it back over to Kim.
Okay, we just have a couple of additional slides here. We have a slide that lists some of the strengths related to your financial position, and I think from our perspective, things that we have seen as we've been working with you for a number of years, and then also some challenges. So on the left-hand side, the strengths, I think many of these things have already come up in the presentation earlier. Really your strong financial position from your general fund balance, the equity and the financial operations of your enterprise funds, which really are the charges that you're doing are certainly funding your activities as they should be, and you really do have a strong working capital balance in those funds. As mentioned earlier, some funds were transferred this year to the internal service funds. So you continue to have a significant reserve in your self-insurance fund, but those transfers also do set aside money for future projects and planned planned upgrades, which is just a wonderful thing for the county to have. In addition, the debt metrics that Sheehan just went over, the fact that you've been able to hold your tax levy to a zero increase and still see these financial results, I think really says a lot to the county's management. And then finally at the bottom, I have a couple of points. I think we've certainly communicated that the audit process goes very, very well. The county just has a really strong team of financial professionals. Everything we see in terms of policies and procedures, very robust, I would say, but really best practice, which is great to see. And then over, the last year and a half, as we've been working with the county and through kind of these uncertain times, I think the flexibility, the innovation, some of the investments that you've made in technology, I think really just have become pretty apparent to us. The proactive way that you addressed the monitoring of revenues, the adjustments to your capital improvement plan, delaying expenditures, all of that just, I thought all of that was just handled just so well at the county level. And just the county just did not miss a beat with kind of dealing with all of that. On the challenges side, I would say, these are really things that are more, I think these issues are all industry-wide issues, not necessarily just specific to Olmsted County for the most part. Some of the newer things that I'd like to highlight in the challenges, the infrastructure needs and related funding. I know that has certainly been a priority, that we've highlighted on this slide deck before. But, more recently, some of the cost increases and some of the supply concerns that I think really, put that capital improvement plan that you have certainly create some challenges with that when you're having shortage in supplies in your lumber, various metals, all of that is just increasing in cost at a rate that's just pretty incredible right now. COVID-19 and the ongoing impacts, the one part of that we really have been involved in is the additional federal funding. Which at times has been extremely challenging because the funding comes out sometimes before a lot of the guidance is provided. So I think the county has done a really nice job of staying on top of the guidance that has been out there. That certainly will all be subject to audit. So we'll be talking about this for years to come. And then recently the cybersecurity threats, we have had a challenge related to data security and IT challenges, I think annually, but I think the number of cybersecurity items that have just been, in the press and out in the country recently just have again raised that issue. And then finally, I just want to give a kind of a plug here for upcoming accounting standard changes. The county will need to implement a new standard related to leases, both leases where you are the lessor of the property and you're leasing out county-owned property, and also where you're leasing property or any kind of equipment. So that one is in effect for 2022. So we do have a little bit of time to think about that. But certainly that standard in terms of new accounting standards, this one is a little heavier lift than many other standards. So it will take some time for the finance team to kind of go through that process, and we can certainly help with that as needed. And then finally, I did include one slide for the information that we have related to the Fiscal Recovery Fund. Again, this has been an area we have been receiving so many client questions on. I think often because the guidance has just been unclear, and the dollars here really are quite significant. So if anyone is interested in any more information or any webinars or any other possible articles or things related to this, I have provided a link, and certainly we do have a team dedicated to keeping up with the guidance and to responding to questions and putting some frequently kind of asked questions out that we can communicate. So, okay. I think that is all we have.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for any of our presenters? Well, I would like to express appreciation for the great financial position that we are in, thanks to our leadership, Ms. Welsh and Mr. Roman Catala. And also to all the people that Wilfredo thanked in the beginning. This is a group effort, but we really are in an excellent financial position, and thank you so much for that. One thing we just don't have to worry about very much because we're in such good hands.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the 2020 Olmsted County Comprehensive Annual Financial Report.
Second.
Any discussion or questions? The motion, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Now,
Thanks, Wilfredo.
our mid-year update on the 2021 annual board priorities.
Madam
Deborah?
Chair, I'm just going to give Deborah a quick introduction here before she jumps in.
Okay.
You will recall that for the past several years, you've heard department heads come and present just a little update on board priorities at this time of the year. And we're again going to do that. Deborah has really helped me for sure, weave together the many pieces of our strategic planning cycle. This is one of them. The scorecards is one of them. The budget is one of them. We do strategic planning. And so I hope that you're starting to see how these things will eventually be seamless and connect. So Deborah's maybe going to talk about that a little bit and then speak to just kind of kick off this kind of season of board priority updates.
Okay, thank you, Heidi. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Deborah Miller. I'm with Policy Analysis and Communications with PAC. As Heidi alluded to, this is the mid-year update on our annual board priorities, and these are really woven into our broader strategy, which of course includes our mission and vision, and then also the county's 4 long-range goals. Provide operational excellence, be good stewards of our natural and built environments, assure safe and healthy communities, and maintain the foundations of democracy. So these priorities are really intended to be annual things, projects, high priority items. They don't always wrap up in one year, but they're really meant to be the tangible things that help us achieve these 4 long-range goals. So this year for 2021, we have a total of 25 board priorities in progress, and the full list should be in your packet. And as Heidi mentioned, staff will be providing updates at each of the next 3 board meetings. So I'm starting today just with a few from Provide Operational Excellence, and Matt Peabody will be joining me. And then on July 6th, you'll hear about Assure Safe and Healthy Communities. July 20th will be Be Good Stewards, and then also Maintain Foundations of Democracy. And then finally on August 3rd, we'll wrap up with the rest of Provide Operational Excellence. So with that, I'll talk just briefly about the fee study, which is number 4 under the Provide Operational Excellence item. So this started with the executive management team at their request. The fee study began last year and will continue at least through the end of this year. And so this is being led by the management analysts on my team, but also working in coordination with finance, and then also with all of our departments that have public-facing fees, which is about half, a little less than half of our departments. So today's highlights are going to be brief because we actually are planning a longer presentation for you at a committee of the whole later this summer. You really haven't heard much about this at all, and so we're going to do a whole session devoted to this. I think right now we have it scheduled for the first session in August. But briefly, the purpose is really first to better understand our own fees that we're charging the public for a variety of services. to do some benchmarking, which we've not done universally as a whole county, at least in some time. And then finally, based on that, make any needed improvements, either to our fee structure, to the fee setting process that we use internally, and then also to how we think about our cost recovery goals as it relates to fees. How well are the costs being covered by the fees that we're charging? So there's 5 specific components, and we've completed the first 2, so I'll talk a little bit about those today. Doing an inventory of our fees and then providing a central location for access to this information. We've also done some benchmarking, gathering information from other counties, and then recommending potential changes to our fee setting process, the fee model, the cost recovery model, and any other policy questions. Those will be coming in more detail for conversation in August. So as it relates to the fee schedule, we identified and confirmed approximately 650 fees across the county. Interagency fees were excluded here, so things that we would be charging to other organizations is not included. These are things that the public pays for. So these are things, as you might imagine, related to garbage, some of the things listed on the left there, community corrections, recording and abstracting, and so forth. Many of these are set by the state, and so we don't have much leeway in terms of what the fee is and how much we charge or when we can change the fee, but some of them are, of course, also set by the county. So we've confirmed these for 2021, and we've combined them into one document that is now on our website. So this is the accessibility portion of this, trying to make this more user-friendly for the public. If they're looking for fees, they can go to the individual web pages, but they also have one place that they can go to find these fees. So on our website, if you go to the I Want To drop-down and then Pay, you will see fees listed there. The next step in this process is actually developing an even more user-friendly. This is still a little bit clunky for the user, so we're working toward something that we'll call the Fee Wizard, which is similar to the Waste Wizard if you've used that online. So you can enter a keyword, and then it would pull up that related fee. So it's more of a searchable index for that process. What we learned internally in doing this first inventory is that there's no specific cadence for fees, fee request changes like a review or standardized process in coming to the Board of Commissioners. So you hear different fee requests throughout the year. That's not necessarily good or bad, but it's just an observation that that's our current process, is people bringing things forward as needed for approval. We also learned that some departments regularly benchmark with other counties, others do not. The benchmarking really varies by the service, which probably makes sense because not every county provides exactly the same services. But so again, it's not necessarily good or bad, but just to know that we don't really have a standard set of benchmark counties that we use. So when we did some benchmarking, we chose 5 counties, some based on proximity geographically and some based more on size comparison. So we worked with Dakota County, Carver, Stearns, Goodhue, and Winona. And honestly, we could have kept going. I mean, you can imagine a lot of information would be useful here. Dakota County also has a fee schedule, much like the one we now have on our website, so it was relatively easy to gather that information because it was all in one place. The rest of it was a whole heck of a lot of searching and phone calling. So that's where we left it for now, was with those 5. What we found in the benchmarking is that our fees are mostly consistent with others, both in terms of the types of fees we're charging, the number of fees, and the amounts charged. We are a little bit on the higher end, as is Dakota, just being a little larger counties. We do have more fees. Again, probably not surprising in some ways compared to Winona or other smaller counties. We identified just a handful of opportunities where we could do some further research into the types of fees that others are charging. So for the most part, we did not find major gaps where other people were charging for things that we aren't, or vice versa. But there's a couple of opportunities that we sent back to departments to say, you know, take a look at what this county is doing, see what you think, how this compares to what we're offering. We also know that some fees that counties charge, you know, we take different approaches. So if you think about something like parks admissions fees, some counties will charge them, others have just waived those admission fees altogether. So again, different approaches depending on what the county's philosophy and their approach is around those fees. So as I mentioned, the Committee of the Whole later this summer will talk through these items some more, certainly in more depth, and answer questions that you have about them. But then our intent is also to bring a very rough draft proposal, but just thinking about how we might standardize our fee setting process internally, just so that you have the ability to have a little more cross comparisons when fees are coming forward to you rather than just tackling them one at a time. However, we know that there are going to need to be exceptions to that, and as I mentioned, the state sets some of the fees and we don't have jurisdiction over that. So as appropriate, we'll look at some fee setting standardization. We'll also bring a draft model for determining cost recovery goals for different fees and services across the county. And then, as I mentioned, other policy questions to be discussed. So with that, if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to address them. Otherwise, I'm also going to invite Matt Peabody to come up for the next two priorities.
Madam Chair, can I just add 2 cents about the fee study, which I have had a chance to see the draft of. I'm really pleased with the work that's been done thus far, but I think this is a really good piece of work that allows the board to step in and really think about a serious policy issue. How do you want to think about revenue? What is the best way to manage levy versus other revenue versus fees? So I'm really looking forward to that committee of the whole discussion for the board to think about this further.
Hi, Madam Chair and board members. Matt Peabody, Director of Information Technology Solutions. And there we go. Just want to update you a little bit about multi-factor. This was one of your board priorities and ours. You heard a little bit earlier today on the financial report that there's been an increase in cybersecurity incidents. This is probably the biggest thing that we can do to protect ourselves going forward. So that's why it's a priority, and I appreciate your support on that. The purpose of this was really to add that multi-factor authentication into there. We wanted to review the current methods that are being used, implement in ITS, and you can see the term dog food up there. We're pushing this on ourselves first, so then we can work out all of the bugs and heal any of the pains that you might experience. After that, we're going to roll to a couple of the other departments and then go countywide. What we'll be doing is asking for people to register early, and I'll show you a little bit about what that looks like. Our approach is to take a cloud first and then move inward to our data systems. I'll kind of say it's like we have walls up around our data center, data there. We're building the fences outside to protect the rest of the area, so the people that aren't in the data center or our data inside there. So we're kind of going outward and working our way in. The term cloud we use for really any of our data that's not really in our data center. That's increasing, so that's a bigger attack surface for us. We've had multiple apps go out to the cloud and their data being stored out there.
What does it mean to dog food?
That's where we use it ourselves. So it comes from the term eating your own dog food. So we use it in IT of essentially
something like that.
Something's a mess. It's called a dog's breakfast.
That's the cleansed version.
But it really is. It's us doing it ourselves first, so we know what you might experience. So.
You know, that multi-factor authorization, if you want somebody to be behind it, this commissioner is. In my job where I work for the accounting firm, I mean, they take that pretty seriously because they have a lot of people's financial data, and we use it there. And it's easy. I mean, it's a lot easier than some of the stuff we do. It's a learning curve. It takes people about a little while to get used to it. It's change, but you got to do it because we're vulnerable.
Absolutely. And I think I appreciate your support there. And one of the things that I'm finding is that most people have been doing this and they don't even know. So my example is if any of you log onto your bank and then you get a text and it's got six numbers you got to punch in, that's what we're going towards. So we've got a couple of options here. And
will we have to do that every 10 minutes?
No. So,
all right. Thank you.
And I can explain a little bit about what our
7 minutes.
You might be able to get it up to 12. 15. No, once you're in, you're in. I mean,
once you're in,
you're in.
Yeah.
But If
So-
you go away for, if you're inactive for a half hour, then you gotta do it again or something like that. But, I mean, I don't think we wanna be held ransom like Colonial Pipeline or, JBS.
Exactly, and this would help prevent that, so. So a couple things, I'll just talk a little bit about what the process is. You can see there's that middle one that's kind of dark on the back that says use verification code. That's one I did, I think it was a couple days ago. It's the text, so exactly what you're seeing there. I personally prefer what's called the authenticator over there on the left side. What it is whenever I now sign in, and we have it set up currently, so then if I sign in from, I'll say a suspicious place. So right now, my PC here, it's known, it's okay. I don't get the prompt because we already have secured that in other ways. If I went home and I tried to sign into an app from my personal PC, we're going to prompt there and say, no, this isn't a PC we control. This is someplace that we might see data leakage. So we're going to prompt for that. What happens then is on my phone, I get a little notification like the one up there. It says approve or deny. I don't have to type in codes. I don't have to do anything else. Approve or deny. And if it's me, I'm going to approve it. If it's not, I'm going to deny. And there's even an option to alert us as ITS that there's something wrong.
How could you deny it if it's not you?
So what might happen there is let's say somebody got a hold of my password and they were trying to log in and they were in New York. It should prompt here and I should look at that and go, well, I'm not in New York. I didn't just log in. So now I'm going to deny it. And that's part of this thing of multi-factor saying, even if they have my password, they still don't have my phone in that case to give us another.
What it does at my other place of employment is whenever I log in, even at work, it calls up the phone and it dials it up and then, it says, are you trying to log in? Just hit a number and you hit a number and you're good to go. I mean, it's easy, but it's tough for the bad guys to get in. Tougher.
Correct, much tougher. Yep. So, and that's one of the other things I'm going to stress is we're going to have options and we're going to have people do multiple options. So, I also tried calling my phone. So it calls you, it says, in this case, when I got the call, it said press pound. That's all I had to do was press pound, but it might ask you, hey, press 3, just to make sure it's somebody on the other end. One of the other ones that we're going to have is that bottom right. It's a little key fob that you would carry around with little rotating numbers. It's the same thing. It would say, hey, enter those numbers that's on that little key fob on there. So we're working through multiple options, trying to give people, the freedom to either use the app, use texting, use the little key fob, keep it with them. We are also testing a little USB that you would plug into your PC and it would just act as that. So lots of different options. Right now, what we're trying to do is make it as painless to the user as possible. Like I said, my PC back there, I'm not getting prompted. If I went home and some of you know the VPN software that uses and kind of brings you into the county, if I deactivate that, it's also going to prompt me and say, hey, this isn't where it's normally supposed to be. We need some better proofing of your authentication here.
When you say it notifies me, you're talking about you. It goes to you.
Me,
not me, the user, when I do that.
No. It would go to you as the user.
The user, like you try and type in, like Jim tries to type in from his computer at home. I log in, put in my thing, and I'm using the example from my other place of employment. As soon as I hit enter, it says dialing, and it dials up the phone, and you don't even answer hello. I know the number, and I hit click, and it lets me in. Otherwise, it won't unlock it.
Similar to some bank accounts, they send you a code to say enter this code.
Absolutely.
It's not even inconvenient. I mean,
I get it.
It's not bad. So you as a user, I'm not approving all of you. That would.
When you say me, I'm not sure exactly who me was, but I get it now.
All of ITS, just a little update on our progress here. All of ITS is going, I was hoping next week, it might be a week out after that. And just a couple of observations, we already talked about those. Many other counties have really implemented this through the pandemic. We're going to be encouraging people to do those multiple ones, so you aren't stuck with, I forgot my phone at home and now I can't log in or something like that, or the battery's dead. or I don't know, where my little key fob is. So you'll have a backup so you can always get in. And then we already talked about when you would be needing to use this, which is really when we think it's kind of out of the normal for you. So
I would suggest you don't have too many options. I mean, who forgets their cell phone? Anybody here not have their cell phone on them? Anybody?
My wife never can find her cell phone.
Why do I need a cell phone here?
Yeah.
Well, you're one of a few, but you don't need to be factored in either. I don't know.
There you go. Yeah.
Life goes on for all one. Let me tell you. And you get hacked, life won't be going on. I won't get hacked.
So what we're going to do there is we're going to do a preferred list to kind of say, hey, this is what we want to do. And if you go down the list, take that. So here's our first choice, here's our second one. And yeah, I know there's a plethora, so we don't want to confuse people and say, here's 8 different ways, pick one. Everybody's going to go, I don't know. So.
Right. Can I get a Star Trek communicator? That would really be very
Only
helpful.
if we can beam you up, Scott.
Yeah, right.
Did you beam him up?
I don't know if we can beam him up. That's a little outside of my realm.
Mothership, I need to get on.
Any other questions on this?
Okay, sorry.
Good deal. Be safe. Man.
That's what we're shooting for.
You need anybody in your corner, call me. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, so I'll leave that up.
How soon do you expect to roll it out to everybody?
We will be, by the end of the year, everybody done. And then depending on uptake. So on some of this, if a bunch of people say, yeah, sign me up, and they go and do it, it'll be quicker. If we have some people going, I can't do it yet, then it'll be a little bit later. But we're really planning for, I'd have to look. I think we're looking at about 50 people per week, and we plan backwards from there at the end of the year. That was our latest we could do.
How many unique users do you have to accommodate?
1,400.
1,400?
Yeah, somewhere around there. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Okay, now our open meeting law post-emergency declaration.
Excitement. Confusion reigns.
Who thought we'd get here? And here we all are.
Good afternoon, commissioners.
Are we at post-emergency or are we still in
Close.
emergency?
We got at least another 30 days. For the record, I'm Brent Walls, First Assistant Olmsted County Attorney. And I'm presenting the open meeting law item on your agenda. And I'd like to begin by introducing Jennifer Plant, who's a senior attorney in our office come on forward. Jennifer assisted with this project. She's been with our office for about 10 years now. She started off doing adult protection work. I think I'm standing in the way. And she transitioned to doing criminal appeals. And all along the way, she built her civil practice and last October started doing exclusively civil work. So she helped with this presentation and you may be seeing her in the future. So I'd like to thank Jennifer.
Welcome.
Oops. So what is the current state of things? How have we been able to operate under the open meeting law while not actually meeting personally? There is an exception in the open meeting law that allows for meetings by electronic means when in-person meetings are not practical or prudent because of a pandemic. Which begs the question, what will happen once the pandemic is over? And the legislature made some changes recently that will allow for interactive meetings to continue, but only under certain conditions. So right now, the only way that you can have a virtual appearance at a meeting and still be considered a part of the meeting, a member for the quorum, able to vote and so on, is if you use interactive television, which is a specific type of interactive technology. As of August 1st, which is when the legislative change is effective, you'll be able to use interactive technology, which is
broader than just interactive TV, and it's a defined term that allows you to use any device, software, program, or other application that allows individuals in different locations to see and hear one another. So Microsoft Teams, Zoom, all would be appropriate platforms, but it's with certain conditions. Okay, and those conditions are all members can see and hear each other and can see and hear all discussion and testimony presented at the location where a member is present. The public attending at the regular meeting location can hear and see all discussion, testimony, and votes. At least one member of the governing body must be present, physically present at the regular meeting location. Oops, went too fast. All votes must be by roll call so that each vote can be identified and recorded. That all sounds familiar to what we've been doing. So the next two conditions are problematic or create impediments. Each location at which a member of the governing body is present is open and accessible to the public. Now that's different than what we've been doing under the exception for a pandemic, when you can appear from your private residence because the people shouldn't have been going out in public during the pandemic. So in the future, if a member of the county board wanted to appear virtually at a meeting, you would need to do so from a public location that's also accessible. And neither one of those terms is defined in the statute, but it would be someplace other than your private residence and someplace where a member of the public who was there with you would be able to observe the meeting as though they were here. Then the next,
Would that be like a diner? I mean, are you talking?
Coffee shop?
well, that's an open question, I think, yeah. So a diner would be open to the public. A tavern probably would be open, but only for those who are over age 21.
So a library, for example.
Library, a place where you would have to pay a fee, perhaps, would not be open to the public necessarily.
How would they know where I am?
Ah, well, you have to give notice. That's the next slide. So if you're going to appear virtually, you have to be at a public location, and county administration has to give notice in advance of that location, just like they give notice of where this meeting will take place. So for a regular meeting, we have to give 3 days advance notice. So if you were going to appear virtually from a different location, you would have to let administration know sufficiently in advance so that they could notice that location. So that it creates an impediment for people that have last minute issues with scheduling and would like to appear virtually. Even if they could get to a public location, they aren't able to notice it, so you might have an open meeting law problem because of the notice.
With the requirement to be able to see, you not necessarily be able to do that on your laptop in a public location anyway, right?
That's right.
You're going to have an interactive television or something that any members of the public who would wish to watch it could watch it.
I think that's right. Otherwise, you're having people that are looking over your shoulder trying to see what's on your laptop.
Mr. Wells, what happens if there's an emergency? You know, what if we have a flood or a tornado and there's a need to call the board together for some emergency purpose? What happens then?
Oh, that would be done under the same provision that we held meetings at for the pandemic. So it can be not only a health pandemic, but also done in an emergency circumstance. So
and that's statutory. Still exists.
It does.
Okay.
Yes. Yep.
So if you were at a NACO conference, for example, in Maryland, and you wanted to be present at this meeting, if you were in the hotel lobby, would that be all right? Because that's open to the public, but not at the conference itself, because to get into the conference, you would need to be part of NACO?
I think that's right. There's an open
Okay.
question about that, but yeah, I think so.
Well, this is, well, first of all, sometimes legislature has some humor to it. But basically they're saying you can't do this, but I could do this to say that I will be in Timbuktu on such and such a date, and I know that nobody could get there. You know, I mean,
Right,
it's like,
right.
it'd be impossible. I mean,
Right.
how many people from Olmsted are gonna travel to Washington DC
Right, that's
to
what I
be
was
in your
wondering,
meeting,
what
Right.
in the
public do
lobby,
you
in the
mean?
public, yeah.
Right. Or you're on the beach or in the forest, or, you know, it's
So
open to the public, but
Deer
can you,
hunting?
Wow.
yeah,
So
realistically.
you have to have the television, or you have to have the interactive visibility.
Right.
So considering the difficulties, could we as a board opt to not even allow remote?
Yes, yes, it's not required. It's not required, and, well, I'm gonna move on to my next slide.
Yeah.
It
gets better.
I can get it to work. So in terms of the public, I can't get it to move advance. There we go. So if you do have a meeting by interactive technology, you have to allow the public to monitor the meeting remotely to the extent practical, like we've been doing. But there's no requirement for interactive participation if you're having a meeting remotely, and there's no requirement that a meeting be recorded. So, and if you're having an in-person meeting, like we're doing today, there's no requirement that you live stream it to make it available to people. And you can choose to use this statute if you want. You don't have to. It's an option. And you can adopt policies around its use, for example, for your volunteer boards and commissions.
So Mr. Wells, early on when we were doing our remote meetings, there were times that, members couldn't see each other. The public couldn't see who was speaking. So all of those, that would have all be out of compliance now.
Yes, it will be. And it would be without the pandemic. Under the statute that deals with the pandemic, there's no requirement that you actually see what's going on, only hear what's taking place.
Probably going forward, this would be the new standard, even if there was another pandemic, I would guess.
Well, they did make some changes to the pandemic statute as well, right. But, and it's broader than just a health pandemic too. So like the emergency circumstance you talked about, if there's any type, a declaration of an emergency, other than a health pandemic, you can use this provision.
And this applies only to public meetings of elected bodies. It does not apply to the courts, to the judiciary, to the bench.
That's right. It's the open meeting law. So all public bodies to which the open meeting law obtains. Yep. So that's this body. That's your volunteer boards and commissions.
But in theory, then it still would be possible to be at a remote location out of state with advance notice. You're attending the meeting remotely as long as you're doing it in a public place and have 2 laptops.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, I think that's what the statute is saying.
And you've given notice, 3 days notice.
Right. We may get some interpretation from the Department of Administration on this as people use it and find out what works and what doesn't. But so are there any questions? I think that's all the slide. Oh, so I think the practical answer is it's business as usual. In-person meetings at the regular meeting location, and this board can adopt
Mr. Wells, does
policy.
that apply to all official board committees?
It does.
It does not apply to board work groups.
Correct.
Does it apply to our advisory boards?
It does. The open meeting law does. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I add something?
Sure.
Just with respect to the other requirements, and I didn't notice said earlier, so I do apologize, commissioners, but the other caveat with making a remote appearance is that you also have to have in the minutes, it reflected why it is that you're appearing remotely. So not only do you have to provide notice of where you're going to be, but you also have to let everyone know why it is that you need to appear remotely. So it is, I would say, maybe another impediment to making a remote appearance because you have to disclose the purpose for that remote appearance.
Can't just say it's hunting season, huh?
Because I want to is not a valid excuse.
Say because?
On vacation.
Because I want to.
Right. And I think that's really the intent of the legislature. They want people in person, so that's.
Does this apply to our legislators too?
No.
Oh, I just
No.
why did I even ask?
No, they have an entirely different set.
Oh, I know they do, yeah.
Mr. Wallace, what other question? It applies to all elected bodies in Minnesota except the legislature. So it would apply to townships, applies to cities, and applies to counties.
That's right.
The school boards.
That's right.
City councils.
That's right.
Miss Welch is raising her hand.
Oh, Madam Chair, I just want to clarify. So we will be, today we were still okay with people attending. Well, you're all here, but had you been remotely, be all right. We expect that this will expire now in 30 days, and that, we're not expecting that it's going to continue past the next 30-day mark. So that's when this will go into place. Theoretically, we could continue with remote meetings with our advisory boards for the next 30 days. However, we have been working, Lisa's been working with all of them to transition so everybody has the same information. Lisa, do you want to say anything about that? Into the microphone.
Thanks, Amy. I think the only thing I would add is I've been working closely with Brent and with Jennifer, and we'll continue assisting the advisory boards in this transition. It'll be a transition for sure.
I know there's going to be confusion with some of the folks who are serving on those advisory boards, so that's why we're taking a pretty careful and comprehensive set of communications to them. Lisa, you will all get it too. And then another note I just wanted to bring up is about staff participation. So you saw today staff are all pretty much all here, and that is how we will continue. However, I would really like to allow, like, let's say you see Mr. Miller way in the back. Let's say that he was here for one item on consent, and you're pretty sure it wasn't going to get pulled off. I feel like that's a much better use of his time and our, the county board's resources and the county's money to say, Matt, just stay, if you're out in your office at 2122 and you're busy, stay there, hop on the meeting on Teams. If somebody pulls it off and they need to ask you something, you're there. Chances are 1 in 1,000 or something that's going to happen. You might as well save that hour and a half and keep working. So I'd like to use it that way. Strictly speaking, I think that my very fine friends and attorneys here might disagree with me on that choice, but they anyway, I think it's a risk calculation is what it is. I don't think it's a very high risk, and I think that we ought to be willing to take that one small piece.
Do we need some kind of a board movement to do that?
Well, I would ask Brent and Tom. Is that
You can do it administratively.
administrative? Okay.
Well, Madam Chair, Mr. Walls, it would seem to me that the requirement applies to the elected officials, not so much to the staff. In that, so for instance, an example of Mr. Miller, we could choose to ask almost anyone to come in to present virtually to our meetings, could we not?
I think that's correct.
As long as it is noticed on the agenda that this item is coming up, and you could see the person, and right,
You
okay.
can see and hear from this location.
That would be, and it will also be easier. There's a few times when we have people visiting from far away. I think of the residential survey, it's only once every few years, but until now, we have had to pay to have that person. We've through a collaborative with other counties, we paid to fly that person here to give 3 presentations. Well, we don't have to do that. We can just have her present from Colorado.
So we did just now with the auditors.
Exactly. Although I wish that we'd been able to see their. I'm not exactly sure why we couldn't see their faces. That was disappointing, but yes.
We've done that with Charlie forever.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, pre-pandemic, he
Yep.
never came in. I mean, he'd come once a year maybe, but
Commissioner Beers speaking about one staff member in planning who actually remote works from Indiana, I think it is.
That was New Hampshire, and then it was Indiana. I don't know where he is right
Just
now.
using this one.
Connecticut.
Connecticut?
Okay.
Connecticut.
I'm pretty sure.
Right. Any more questions about the new post-pandemic, post-emergency open meeting laws?
I'm ready to.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move now to the board and committee reports. We'll start with Commissioner Beer.
What?
No.
Are you present?
Do you have any board or report?
Nope.
Okay.
Nothing of any
Nothing worth
significance.
Brown,
mentioning.
Commissioner Tyne?
Nothing.
Commissioner Flynn?
Actually, I've had committees and at least we had extensions. It's nice to see these people after a year and a half.
Well, yeah,
I think these committees
I love it.
they've gone much better, smoother.
Yep.
People are in a very
Agreed.
good
Agreed.
mood,
Agreed.
I guess. With the committee, and we thank them for being on these committees. The only other thing, on Saturday, the breakfast on the farm, we could go see our former public works director, Mike Sheen, will be flipping pancakes. It's a huge event on your family farm, so if anybody can make it, I'm sure you'll see him making pancakes.
This Saturday?
Nice.
This Saturday,
I suppose it's early because it's a farm.
it's like 7 to 11 or 6 to 11.
Let you practice up for the milking contest, Stephanie.
Yeah.
Or
that's a
let you
good point.
practice up for that.
No cows out there. You could find one, Stephanie. So, but that's going on.
One or two cows out there.
Thank you. Commissioner Cascaden?
Well, I don't know if Commissioner Wright or you, Madam Chair, can you talk about the AMC district meetings?
But you can go ahead. No.
I did want to call out that there was a meeting last week that Channel 1 organized that's looking at creating a network to manage food security issues. And it actually is fairly interesting to think about how you get collaboration across these various entities that are trying to deal with food security. And they also announced that they'd received another federal grant of, I think, $250,000, and they'll be doing some. They've been meeting with different communities and identifying what their needs are, and they're changing some of their practices to make it more customer friendly, is what they talked about, including this new grant that we're getting. There's a central kitchen that's going to start preparing prepared meals that can be delivered. So when you think about some people who have disabilities or are frail or whatever, that they'll be able to have prepared meals delivered. So that was a fairly interesting conversation. I think Commissioner Brown and I have been attending the MICA meetings, and everybody's got their fingers crossed about what's going to happen. With the legislature, there's some good news things coming, including the tax bill has that tax credit that we had been seeking and has changes that would allow private investment into housing and a tax credit for that, and includes the 4D changes for housing rehab that we've been looking for, and also includes the youth homelessness prevention, but it doesn't start for another year. So those are all kind of good news things coming our way. A bad news thing coming our way is the Department of Human Services is redoing the rate structure for targeted case management. And while our staff has been telling us about this, they're starting with our contractors and then eventually moving to counties. And at least one contractor who's talked to me about what's happening from a board I used to be on in the Twin Cities, is it is clearly that particular agency that provides mental health services. It's the Center for Victims of Torture, is anticipating a 47% reduction in the host county contract that they have with Ramsey County. So that's kind of a sign of we may be, there's some challenges here that our staff are. I know Travis has met with staff the other day to look at this question. We have some risks coming in that particular arena as the department comes in compliance with what the feds are expecting, because our rate structure, as we know, the department has had some problems with rate structures. So that's those are, I guess, the things I most wanted to call out to you.
Commissioner Wright?
Yeah.
Would you like
I'll
to talk?
mention
Why
it.
don't you talk about?
Oh, Madam Chair, I'm sorry.
Yes.
We were going to talk about the HRC meeting.
One question, I need to run, we have 4 people tonight for the Board of Adjustment.
I'll be here.
Right,
One, two,
I need
three.
to take off.
Commissioner Beer, you'll be here tonight?
Yes, I will.
Okay. All right.
See ya.
The Human Rights Commission had a joint meeting with Public Health, and Sheriff Torgerson and Chief Franklin presented last Thursday night.
Sheila, before Prentice, so we have to know where you are.
And
Hey, where are you going?
Why?
Huh?
Be online.
Oh, all right, just check. Oh.
Is it okay, Brent?
For Brent.
Sorry, Sheila. I had to do it.
I think you probably read about it in the Post Bulletin. It was a fairly well-attended public meeting, a lot of discussion. So that happened last Thursday.
Thank you, Sheriff. Comments?
I think toward the end you were kind of enjoying yourself.
Okay, so AMC, just a few, and you can add some comments, but my top items that I came out of there with when they were talking, when all the rest of the counties were talking about is the big concern that they had that was mentioned the most often was recruitment and retention of staff. It showed up in almost all the counties that they were concerned about that.
From each other.
Well, yeah, no, they blamed us for stealing them. So I mean, you know, but and I think that is a concern. That's a concern that all employers are having about getting employees, and it probably talks to the HR departments about what our benefit package is and what our salaries are. I mean, that's basically what it comes down to is recruiting and retaining people. So that'll be a discussion coming up. And the other interesting item that I thought is that they talked about the insurance. Now we're self-insured, but the other counties were a part of an insurance conglomerate, and the rates are going up. And there is some of the reasons for the rates going up has to do with more lawsuits that deal with policing cases of arrests and how the arrests are made and of people being injured. So it's another thing that I'm sure that the Sheriff's Association is going to be talking about, and it's going to be a state issue eventually. But and we're very fortunate that we have a very good Sheriff's Department here, and they have very good training. But it doesn't prevent the fact that we won't have a lawsuit at some point in the future, as we could with anything. So, but I thought that those were the two takeaways that I had. Thank you.
I just wanted you to know that I did meet with the HRA Resident Advisory Board, which they're beginning to start, and so I gave them 2-minute review of the history of the HRA here and asked them about what they were hoping would come out of their Resident Advisory Board. So they're just beginning that. I want to remind people to stay after. Ryan's going to do some kind of a video. And I have a quote. I will get back to the presidential quotes, but I think all of us, as we're coming out of the pandemic, have just tried to find some things that will help us realize what we've been through and because I think all of us have had some emotional struggles in the last 18 months being separate from each other and figuring out how to do things and trying to understand other people's behavior and our own behavior. So this is a quote. It's easy to look back and question decisions you have made in the past. but it's unfair to punish yourself for them. You can't blame yourself for not knowing back then what you know now. And the truth is, you made each decision for a reason, based on how you were feeling at the time. As we grow up, we learn and we evolve. Maybe the person you are now would have done things differently back then. Or maybe you are the person you are now because of the decisions you made back then. Trust your journey. It's all going to make sense soon. I don't know about that, but hopefully that's very optimistic. So our meeting will be adjourned now, and we'll stay for some video that